And that is the piece I will leave persons with. Persistence for purpose. You have to be persistent, but you have to be purposeful.
Welcome to Push Your Peace Podcast, the number one podcast in the region for living a progressive and happier life. On this episode, I'm joined by Damian Wilson, a communication expert, breaking down why strong communication builds trust, boosts productivity, and is critical during crisis. He also shares his vision for launching a professional communication association and the Turks and Caicos to strengthen standards and collaboration across sectors. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and follow the channel. Sit back, relax, and let's get ready to push some peers. Damian, welcome to Push Your Peers. This is long overdue, by the way.
Very long overdue, and thank you very much. And may I say hello to all of the audience out there, all of the fans that tune into Pushing Your Piece. I hope you guys had a wonderful Christmas season. Let me just get that out of the way, and looking forward to a great 2026. As Leo said, this has been long overdue, man. Way overdue.
But Damian, first of all, this is the first episode of the year, so I just want to also say Happy New Year's, and I pray all of you, whatever your ambitions are, your heart's endeavors, and my mother would always say, put God first in everything that you do, and we're
Absolutely.
wishing you a prosperous year filled with good health and prosperity. So Happy New Year's, everyone.
Sounds good to me.
Now, Damian, who is
hmm
Damian Wilson?
Well, I like to define myself as a communicator, facilitator, and connector. And that's what I do in life, right? So I connect people, organizations, basically through facilitation by communication, making sure that they communicate in the right way, the right time, and with the right people. And that's Damian Wilson in a nutshell.
I can see you practice that, Damian, because not many people struggle with that. So that was very good.
Listen, I actually have several elevator pitches, believe it or not.
I love that, bro. But amazing. I'm so excited for the show because you're somebody who not only has worked in the field for a long period of time, but you've educated yourself in the field. You've done
hmm
research in the field. You've made valuable contributions in the field of communication. So this episode should be filled with so many jumps. Let's start off with research. You know, an area that we don't do enough of right here in the Turks and Caicos Islands. You led a research last year, well, 2 years ago, on communications right here in the Turks and Caicos Islands, that field. Tell us about that research and why you chose to do that study.
Well, the study was actually born out of my professional experience within TCIG. In 2020, I was seconded to the Ministry of Health to assist with developing a communication response to COVID. And I one of the things I wanted to do was to really see what the impact from a communication standpoint was and how COVID communications impacted the population. And TCIG didn't have a mechanism for me to do that. And so I wanted to explore that option. And I decided, you know what, the best way to do that is to do a master's degree. And so I went into a master's degree with my research focus from day one, which was ironic. Day one, my first class, they asked, who in here knows what their research topic is going to be? And I put up my hand, and I was literally the only person. And everybody looked at me and was like, how do you know what you're going to research? I'm like, I'm only doing this for a specific purpose, right? And my research was entitled, hold on, I don't remember the title of my paper, so please forgive me. I have to actually go and look. The title of my paper was The Impact of Culture on Crisis Communication, a case study investigating the efficacy of the Turks and Caicos Islands Government Ministry of Health's COVID-19 pandemic response. Long topic, basically to say investigating the impact of culture on crisis communication. All right. Now, one of the things I don't think people think about, or they think about it, but in the wrong concept. We tend to think of communication as only a tool, right? And it is a tool, and there are a number of different tools under communication that you can use. However, particularly in a small island state context like Turks and Caicos, communication is not just a department, because we tend to think Greater Turks and Caicos or Communications Directorate. Is really meant to be national and organizational infrastructure, essentially. I think one of the things we have to start doing as communicators is to start trying to get into the room. And by that, I mean the room where decisions are made, because communication is often an afterthought. And if we're sitting at the table, then we can advocate for our industry. Now, that takes some networking, that takes some effort on our part, right? So there is work for us to do as communicators. However, I think one of the key things we need to do is to get buy-in from the wider community so that they demand that we sit at the table, right? And to do that, we need to get them to see that communication isn't just an activity, but it is actually about useful output, right? So, because productivity, that's what productivity is. What is the useful output? And to do that, we need more research, right? We as communicators need to advocate for budgets to do more social science research so we can show the real impact of our efforts. And in that, communication flows, right? The useful output that we get from communication, right? Because if we are not looking to examine useful output, what happens is communication is often waste, right? It gets burned up in things like reworking, which is doing stuff over and over, waiting, which creates delays, you know, doing the wrong thing at the wrong time, so confusion. But quality information flows is what we want from communication, productivity, quality, and in that, I can sum that up in one sentence. Who knows what, when they knew it, and what they did with it. And that's it in a nutshell. Is we need to what proper strategic communication is about is finding out who knew what, when they knew it, and what they did with it. Right? Because at the end of the day, communication, like any other piece of infrastructure, has to be useful. It has to serve a purpose. So it's not there just for people to take photo ops or for people to, only say the good stuff. It's there for us to figure out organizational activities, there for us to understand strategic goals, because communication objectives need to be tied to organizational objectives. And that's one of the things a lot of communicators fail to do, right? So, in essence, communication is about coordination and collaboration because it goes back to productivity. No productivity can happen, particularly in multi island states like Turks and Caicos, without coordination and collaboration. And so you need communication to make that happen.
Coordination and collaboration. I hearing a
Yeah.
lot of C's. We on pushing your P's by hearing some C's. No, but Damien, I would be doing my audience a disservice if I don't ask you this next question. You have 20 years in this industry. You have seen it all in the area of communications and modern day of communications here in the Turks and Caicos Islands. There was a period. I'm talking about the 2000s, where it seems as though we were at the peak of communications in this country. I mean, multiple news outlets, news reporters, we was it was coming in. Now it seems
Mhm.
as though we're at a rapid decline. What happened, Mr. Wilson, in our communications?
I mean, that takes a lot of analysis. I don't have the concrete data to tell you this is what we know for sure happened, right? That would take some social science research. And I would love to advocate for that research to see why the industry is on a decline, as you said. Now, however, just based on observation and my professional opinion, there are some things that happen. One, I think we're not actually prepared from a infrastructure standpoint to take communication to the next level in this country. So we have a desire, we have things we want to do, but from the infrastructure standpoint, and I'm talking not just government, but government, private sector, all of us, we're not putting the necessary things in place, right? And that includes policies, right? And there are some policies that are needed. There are things that are needed, like intellectual property laws, data protection laws, information governance policies. These things are needed to help create an information society because that is where we should go. If you look at most major economies now, they're really information societies. Information is shared, it's passed along. Why? Because that information is used to create useful output, right? Productivity. People need information, they need data, they need communication. And communication isn't just about doing more, right? This isn't just about doing more. It's about creating decision speed and decision quality. And for that, it's choosing to do the right work and executing that well. And for that, we need to communicate and collaborate and coordinate. And I can't let go of those things, right? And so let me paint a picture for you, right? That will look like shared situational awareness. Everyone seeing the same reality, being aware of the same opportunities, the same risks, and understanding them, right? That looks like role clarity. People who own their roles, they know what their role is, they know why their role exists, and they know what to do in those roles. And when we say done, they know what done actually means. Because oftentimes we think because we all speak English, we're talking about the same thing, and we're often not. Because my idea of a project completion and your idea of a project completion may be two different realities, right? Of course, again, in multi-island states, people wear multiple hats. So you need to try and decrease delay. You need to try and decrease confusion. So proper communication looks like fast alignment, less time renegotiating priorities, everybody getting on the same page quicker, right? This is what communication will do for us. It will improve business and government, right? It looks like decentralized responsiveness. And in that, what we mean is the ability for individuals and individual teams to respond to a situation without having to wait on another person. Why? Because I know what my role is. I know why my role exists. And I know how to perform my role. So therefore, I can take action without having to wait. This speeds up our ability to respond, and particularly in a crisis. Right? So proper strategic communication will do this for us. Now, in practical terms, those things require having openness and transparency in terms of organizational operations, right? And in particular with government, right? And I think government needs to get to a point where you have more communication from departments, not just from ministers, but from departments themselves, not waiting weeks and days or sometimes a month to put out a press release, right? A press release, again, is just one communication tool in a wider toolbox. So think of communication itself like a big toolbox with so many different things in it that you can use, right? Some things may not even require a press release. The police has done a good job lately of using video communications, right? And I love that because they're now realizing, you know what? Our audience isn't always going to read. So if we come to them and we speak to them and they visually see us, and there are certain things you can do. Well, there are certain things you can do um, in a video that will help you connect with your audience that you just can't do in a written piece of communication, right? Yeah, and so that is where we need to get to. Especially, I think decentralized responsiveness is one of the key things that we need to get to in this country, where I understand that sometimes, Leo, you're going to be waiting on John, right? Because John has a piece of data that you need and you can't do work without it. But that don't mean you can't start your work. See, and if John is communicating clearly with you, then you know, okay, this is the time frame I have to wait on John. Within this time frame, I can etch out a plan of what I can do so that by the time John gets to me, I can just jump on it, right? And work gets done. And communication will do that. But the key thing about communication, I always tell people, communication is about building trust. You have to build trust. It's not just about trying to influence people. And what you will realize is that influence is actually easier when people trust you, right? So as you have to learn to share bad news and good news. People have to feel, and this is where leaders come in. Leaders have to create that safe space where persons feel comfortable communicating the good, the bad, and the ugly, right? And because that's the only way we're going to get to a place of trust, right? And when people feel comfortable, when they have that psychological safety, then they communicate bad news earlier, which means you're not hearing about the bad news just before the event happens, and now you realize, oh, you don't have a band when you thought all this time you had a band, right? You're not hearing that the chips weren't delivered, right? And now you have no microchips to put in your device. People share bad news earlier when they feel they have psychological safety and they can trust leadership, right? Risk get escalated faster. Why? Because if someone sees a risk, they're more inclined to say, hey, Leo, here's what I've identified. Let's work on a plan to mitigate that. Right? So this is where communication impacts productivity. You know, decisions are accepted with less drag. And from an organizational perspective, when we say drag in communication, we're talking about resistance, right? So we're taking an aviation term and applying it to comms. And we're saying people accept decisions with less resistance when you have that trust, right? You may come and bring me bad news, but because I trust you, I'm not gonna build up a wall and try to say, no, I'm not listening to Leo. We're not doing this. I'm more likely to say, okay, Leo, I hear you. I'm willing to follow you, right? Because I trust that you're going to lead me in a good place. In particular, when you have that communication between leadership and subordinates, your subordinates will trust you to lead them to hell and back, but they know you won't. Why? Because they have faith in you. You see? And so that's go ahead. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I think the biggest barrier preventing persons from entering the field is a lack of knowledge of the field to begin with, right? We don't see communications as a viable career option in this country. And that is one of the biggest obstacles to getting into it. People won't get into something that they think isn't going to make them money. Let's be realistic about it, right? And a lot of times what we see, and this is not just in the communications field, but this is across the spectrum, we see persons being brought in to do the big things, right? To make the real bucks. And we're brought in to do the cleanup work. And so persons don't see that as, in particular, from a communication perspective, as a viable career option. Now, there are other things like training. There is things like investment. That's a real big issue, huge issue, right? There needs to be public and private sector investment in the area of communication. And we're not seeing that on level that would necessitate a professionalization of the industry. Now, one of the big things I believe that the industry itself can do is to create a professional association that will say to government and private sector, this is what we want. These are the standards we're setting for ourselves. Now, I am one of the persons who have been advocating for a professional communications association for quite some time. And to be honest, I've recently spoken to several persons and asked them, hey, let's have a meeting in January where we can all, as comms professionals, discuss this and to see whether or not we want to go in this direction. Why? Because I have spoken with government myself, and they're interested in supporting this, right? I've spoken with persons overseas, the Global Alliance for Communication, which is the international body for PR and communications. I know two of the directors in Global Alliance. They're willing to speak to persons in Turks and Caicos about why professionalizing the industry will help you. It will propel you, right? And even being a part of other international bodies will help to give us credibility, right? I have persons regionally that I've spoken to that and asked them, hey, would you be willing to come to speak to professionals in Turks and Caicos about professionalizing the industry? And they're willing to do that, right? And so I think professionalism comes from the ability to have not just credibility within your little sphere, but credibility on a wide scale. Because a lot of us have credibility with our audiences. But when it comes to decision making, do you have that same level of credibility is the question. And I think that is where we want to get to as communicators. We're not just having credibility with our audiences, but credibility with decision makers in public and private sector. And I think having a Turks and Caicos Islands Communications Association, or whatever we want to name, we want to give it, that can cover PR, marketing, media, you know, digital, all of that. Because we're so small, I think if we work on creating an umbrella organization that covers all of us, I think we'll get much farther that way.
No, Mr. Wilson, I'm gonna say this, and I'm gonna be blunt when I say this. We have become a nation of complainers. We're
Yes, we
not.
have.
We aren't a nation of doers anymore. I was having a conversation recently with a young man. I won't be long with this, and the things that he was complaining about were things that he can actually do himself. I say that to say, all it takes is one meeting and drafting a paper, and that association is well on its way. We don't have to wait for the government. We don't have to wait for the minister. We don't have to wait for anybody. We just have to take the initiative with that small group of people, and eventually that small group will grow. But we've become a country that posts on social media for one day, and we feel one day, that one day post with 100 likes and 20 comments is enough to get the ball rolling. That's not enough.
You see, Leo, this is the thing, right? This is the thing. Yes, we've become a nation of complainers, and I think we've been conditioned, right? And people will may argue with me. I think we've been conditioned through leadership to complain, right? Because persons use our complaint as justification why they need to be in leadership. And I keep telling people, someone that's looking to use your complaint rather than looking to use solutions is not worth leadership, right? And that's no disrespect to any leader. That's just my personal opinion, right? Because I think a lot of these things have been conditioned into us through leadership, in particular through our civic political culture. Right. And I think we need to address that, especially as millennials and Gen Zers. And I say that not saying that the other generations aren't important, but we are essentially the leadership now, right? In the next 5 years, our parents and grandparents will be in retirement, right? It's going to be on us. So we have no more room to complain. We need to do, we need to take action. And even as far as the association, one of the conclusions I've come to from speaking to persons is just have a meeting and start with who you have, right? Yes, you need government buy-in. Yes, you need private sector buy-in. But what you need is committed individuals willing to take the vision forward. That is more important than anything else, right? People who are committed to developing the industry. And like you said, people post complaints online, right? One of the things I keep saying is that our communication professionals, we should learn a little bit more about our field, right? I'm not saying that you need to go to university because I firmly believe we live in a day and age where you don't necessarily need to go to university to learn about something, right? Most of what I've learned outside of the classroom. And so I think that persons need to just go and research. The thing about posting stuff online, there's a rule in communication, right, that called the 99-1 rule. And it speaks to enclosed communication ecosystems like social media, right? And it basically says that in any enclosed communication ecosystem, 90% of the people are observers. They're voyeurs. They're just there to look. 9% of the people will engage, right? They may click a like. They may share something. But 1% of the people are the drivers, right? And so in essence, when we respond to things on social media, now of course, it's not always going to work out to 1%, 9%. The percentages will vary. But when we respond to things on social media, we're more likely responding to a minority opinion rather than a majority opinion. And that is what actually studying communications will teach you, that not everything you need to respond to on social media.
Now, Dim, you touched on the political side of communication. So this next question is fitting. One of your more candid findings is that political dynamics can sometimes lead to government information being perceived as politically charged, which undermines credibility. How can the government's new communications directorate balance political goals with public need for impartial, trustworthy information?
I mean, this is an area that where many countries have gone round and round and round about this very same issue, and what has come out of it is essentially you need two types of media, right? And not two types, but you need more than one type of media. In countries, a lot of us don't understand, you have private sector or commercial media, you have state media, which is state controlled. They work for the government. The government tells them what to put out. That would be the comms directorate, right? And you have um, public service media, which is essentially Radio Turks and Caicos. That's what we were created to be. And public service media is created by the state, but to serve the public, not the government. And this is what politicians and the public don't understand. The entity is created to serve the needs of the people and funded by the people, right? And so this is why public service media are often what we call arms length bodies, or in TCI, to use a more local term, statutory bodies, right? They're created by statute to be separate and apart from government, but they're public entities. Right now, at the moment, we don't have that with Radio Turks and Caicos, and that's an internal discussion for us and the government. So I'll leave that there. But I'll speak generally to say one of the entities that we acknowledge as being fair and impartial and a news leader, information leader, the BBC. The BBC is the original public service broadcaster. It is the first one. All other public service broadcasters are modeled after the BBC, right? And there's in public service broadcasting, we have what they call the Reithian principles, which states that we exist for three purposes, right? To educate, to inform, and to entertain. And in that order, our mandate must be to educate the public, inform the public, and entertain them. Over the years, we've probably gone more in the entertainment direction because we don't understand our own mandate in that sense, and we think, okay, we're just here to entertain. But no, you're here to educate, inform, and entertain, but in that order. So the only reason you're entertaining is to draw an audience so you can inform and educate that audience. You see, and so that is where there needs to be a distinction between public service media, state media, and commercial media. Right now, again, lots of countries have a different mix, right? You have some commercial entities that will have public service requirements, right? And you'll find this often in Europe. You find public service entities that do have, commercial entities that do have some public service mandates, right? And that's part of their license agreement. You will find that in the US, the industry operates slightly differently, where it's more commercially driven rather than public service driven, right? So it's about Turks and Caicos figuring out what's right for it, but putting in place the necessary policy and legislative infrastructure to say this body must be impartial and must present fair and balanced information to the public.
Thank you, Mr. Seymour. Ladies and gentlemen, that's Damian Wilson. This is Damian Wilson on Pushing Your Peace podcast, sharing a wealth of knowledge on how we can improve our communications right here in the Turks and Caicos Islands. Now, Damon wouldn't be a guest on our show if he didn't push some peace. So, Damien, any word or words that begins with the letter P that has been transformational to your journey as a communications expert, you now have a chance to push your peers.
Oh, definitely. And it's something I say to a number of persons who I've mentored over the years. I often don't call myself a mentor, but I'm getting called a mentor so much lately that I'm starting to embrace the word. I'm starting to embrace it. I tell people I don't consider myself a mentor because I believe we're all meant to guide each other. Because younger persons can guide me, not because they're young doesn't mean they can't guide me. There may be something that they are well astute about that I need their help with. And I recently read a proposal for a national initiative by a young lady that is just phenomenal. And I've said to her, listen, whatever I can do to help you push this, I'm gonna help you push this. And I said to her, and this is what I said to a number of persons, always remember this: persistence for purpose. And that is the piece I will leave persons with: persistence for purpose. You have to be persistent, but you have to be purposeful. As I tell my director, I am loyal to a mission, not a position. So I am loyal to my purpose. And we all have to identify what that purpose is for ourselves. So persistence for purpose.
No, Damon, I love that. Especially when you are in pursuit of purpose, when you are walking in that, you have to have persistence. So I love that that's your piece you pushed on the show. Phenomenal. Now
You're gonna get pushed back, but if you're persistent, things will eventually turn out the way you want them to. May not be exactly, but you're gonna get there.
absolutely. Now we winding down, Damien. We got about what, two more questions. Okay, so we almost there.
Mhm.
Your research notes the industry is very Provo-centric.
Yes.
And the TC and Turks and Caicos, if the Turks and Caicos decided to start its first, now Elon Musk is doing a lot of amazing things, so I must put that out there. But if the Turks and Caicos decides to start its first ever Caribbean space colony, but you can only pick one other island, not Provo, to be the marketing hub for the entire galaxy, which island gets the job and why?
Hmm. The marketing hub of hmm. That's one that you kind of caught me off guard with that one. I don't want to say Grand Turk, and my reasoning for not wanting to say Grand Turk is simple. We don't have the personnel, right, from a marketing standpoint. So that's it. It's not because, oh, I guess I'm a Grand Turk. No, it's just I find that money goes where talent is. And if we're serious about attracting money, attracting business, then cultivate the talent. So I will say the island that actually cultivates the talent will get the business. Personally, from a place I like North Caicos. So I tell people all the time, I plan to move to North Caicos at some point, and that's why I like it. I'm a very big environmental person, and I like nature, and so I just like the sereneness of North Caicos. You know, I tell people I'm a true Turks and Caicos Islander in the sense that I have one grandparent from four of the major islands, and so I like to throw that in there. One from Provo, one from South, one from North, one from Grand Turk. So I tend to feel welcome wherever I go because the minute people ask, who's your family? And I just name that grandparent, oh, Charlie's family. So I feel comfortable everywhere.
Modern day Sean Malcolm. But
I guess you could put it that way.
but Damien, thank you so much. Final question. It's a spin-off question. Now you a communications guy, you should know this one. And you deal with food too. Is hot dog a sandwich? If not, is a taco a sandwich?
Um, what's the basic definition of a sandwich? If we're going on the basic definition of a sandwich is basically meat between two slices of bread. That's the basic definition of a sandwich. So Technically, a hot dog is a sandwich, but is the hot dog bun two slices or one?
This guy, you're brilliant.
That is where I see a little wiggle room in there. And then the question would be, is a taco a sandwich because it doesn't have bread? Because we say sandwich is a bread thing, but now as that word has evolved through use, we no longer see sandwich as just being with bread.
Mhm.
So a sandwich is basically meat between anything. So
Got it.
yeah, taco could be a sandwich, right? And again, it all depends on how we define these things because we all use the words differently.
Absolutely. Ladies and gentlemen, I won't say I would allow you to chip in on this debate. Is a hot dog a sandwich? If not, is a taco a sandwich? You guys could drop a comment, shoot us a DM, let
I'm
us
gonna say
know.
definitely hot dog is a sandwich.
Thank you so much, Damien. Now, Damien, how can we find you? And also, how can we get a copy of your research?
Well, one of the things I realized through our conversation is that I've actually done multiple research. So I was talking about my final big project, and I realized you're talking about the communications industry report that I generated. Persons can hit me up for a copy of that via email because I haven't created a website. I keep saying I'm going to create a website and post it, and I haven't done it, so that's my bad. But you can email me at Damian, Damian dot Wilson, Wilson dot PR, as in public relations, at gmail.com. Right? I am findable on social media. I'm on all major social media platforms under my name, so I don't make it difficult for you to find me. So if you want to reach out on Facebook, Instagram, any of those other platforms, just look for Damian Wilson. I don't know any other Damian Wilsons out there except for my son, so we should be good. I mean, I have a cousin in Florida by the name of Damian Wilson, but obviously I don't live in Florida.
So we should be able to find you right here in the Turks and
Yeah.
Caicos. Damien, thank you so much. Any final words you want to leave us with?
Well, the thing I want to leave people with is communication is everything, man. Communication is everything. There, when you think about life, there is nothing you can get done without communicating something to someone else. Everything in this world today is interdependent. This idea that we're self-made, no, you're not. You had to rely on your marketing team. You had to rely on your product development team. You had to rely on your customers, your audience. So everything is interdependent. And the better we are at communicating, the more we can get out of this life. And so I would say to persons, you don't have to be a professional communicator to learn communications. Just learn a little bit. I'd like to encourage our leaders out there, learn a little bit of communication leadership. And if you want training, you can always hit me up via the same email, damian.wilson.pr@gmail.com. That's one of the areas I've started moving into is training persons. I recently did some crisis communication training for the Department of Disaster Management, training crisis communicators. And that is my real area of expertise. My specialty is in crisis communication. And I love it. As I tell everybody else, I consider myself the crisis whisperer. When everything else goes to hell, I go to work.
That's amazing. Damien, thank you so much for being a guest on this show and dropping so many gems. And we look forward to having you back on Pushing Your Peers because I know there's so much more. Listen, ladies and gentlemen, we had to pick an angle because Damien got so much knowledge. So we had to pick an angle for this whole entire discussion. But I am looking forward to having him back. He is a communications expert with over 20 years. And of course, he's mentioned he does have a preference for Christ.
And the only chartered communicator in Turks and
Well,
Caicos.
there you have it. Thank you so much for coming on the show, Damian. And of course, we'll be back next week on Pushing Your Peers podcast. Y'all take care.